The time is now for theological schools to be the salt in the society, to be the light. Otherwise, you are just but an ivory tower who is separated from the congregation by the pulpit.
We feel like we are in exile because of unfriendly political environments, unstable governments, cities and villages ravaged by poverty, and institutions struggling to survive. We are trying to innovate, but we have mixed feelings about new ways of education. We feel isolated, disrupted, and alone in the wilderness. We long for that exodus, a movement from the past, a pilgrimage to a glorious future full of possibilities amid new challenges and opportunities.
Theological educators need to understand that those who come to learn from theological institutions also have knowledge, skills, and experiences that they can share in the learning process.
Our theology must answer the questions that people are asking. If a theology does not answer the question that people are asking, then we are not doing theology.
The future of theological education in Francophone Africa lies in inter-African and inter-church collaboration.
Theological education is not only serving pilgrims, but is also on a pilgrimage, discovering itself in the context of new challenges in the world. It constantly reinvents to stay relevant and alive to God's mission. In that regard, theological education is a restless sojourner, sustained by the hope of finding rest in a God-defined home.
The truth of the matter is that our captivity to the Western intellectual tradition is, yes, debilitating and suffocating. Please don't get me wrong. Western theological education has great value, and it can be adapted to the needs of Christian communities globally if its claims to normativity and totalizing constructs are addressed. But the fact remains that Western systematic theology, like any other body of theological discourse, is heavily contextual and ethnocentric. It is designed to promote knowledge of and expertise in issues or topics pertaining to the Western world. Left unguarded, it severely undermines the research agenda needed to refresh theological training and the theological curriculum in Africa.
Most of the time, biblical scholars in particular, they ignore the social science data. And we cannot move forward if we just close our eyes. We have so much richness available. It goes without saying that in a digitalized world, distance learning and the use of new technologies in theological education in Francophone Africa are key factors that must be taken into account.
People complain, much about the schools came from the West, the structures came from the West. We're still, prisoner, slave to things. And yet, I think they miss the incredible things that have been going on piece by piece in many places. One of those has been the integration between the formal and the non-formal. COVID helped with this because COVID helped even the most traditional formal theological education schools to have to rethink what education models look like, to do distance education, to take more advantage of technology and technological tools. And they discovered that there's a lot that the non-formal world was already doing brilliantly that can be drawn on to strengthen the formal world. And yet the non-formal world needs the methodological sophistication of people who know how to write good materials, of tutor-teacher training. And I think the future of theological education is going to be increasing molding together of multiple modes of the ways we do it.
Remember that it is claimed that 95%, or some people say 85%, of pastors in Africa are not theologically and biblically trained. Now, if that is the case, it means that we have actually been working with the minority, and the majority of the people who are actually doing the work are not empowered and equipped to do what God has called them to do. And I believe that the answer to that question is actually non-formal theological education. Because with it, we are able to reach people right where they are, in their churches, in their communities, and in their workplaces. And then it's not going to need as much as is needed in formal theological education. And people will not have to be actually dislocated from their normal working environment to come over to Christian universities and colleges. This is why I'm passionate about non-formal theological education.
If we continue to recycle and rinse and repeat the same patterns and methods that have not served our churches and societies in the way that African theology has the capacity to, we're not only failing ourselves, we're failing the next generation. And I want to put it to you, because of Africa's central role in the world, in global Christianity, we're failing the global church.
We have done a lot of historical reflections, and now we are set to change the narratives, to learn from history, and to build and develop for the future.